Hi everyone, I hope you've been well. For me, the weekend was really hectic, and so another start of a hectic week. I am still grading and trying to catch up, but I did manage to watch Goo Family Book episode 9, so let's go ahead and get started with the recap. We resume from where we left off in episode 8 with Kang Chi being really excited to see Tessel. And then, of course, Tessel ramming Kang Chi with his long sword. And as he does, he tells him, "How could you, after everything my father has done for you, betray him like that?" And then he plunges it further in, and then he takes the sword out, and he's about to deal Kang Chi a fatal blow. And as his sword comes down, Yeo Wool is there with her sword to parry that, and she actually blocks it. And she tells him, "Put down your sword." And he tells her, Tessel says, "Move." And she says, "Put down your sword first." And so it's basically a stalemate. I'm sure Yeo Wool, since Tessel is kind of in a dazed state, and I don't even know if Tessel realizes he's fighting Yeo Wool, right? But since Yeo Wool doesn't want to hurt him, she just kind of holds on to her position, and it's a stalemate until Kwon comes up, kind of like karate chops Tessel on the neck, and then Tessel collapses to the ground. Well, then you see Kwon getting a little jealous because, Kang Chi is on the floor suffering from the bleeding, and then Yeo goes to comfort him and to find out how bad the bleeding is and such. Well, on the flip side, at the courtesan's house or the brothel, we have Chongjo, who brings the wine to the one of the veteran courtesans, and she says, "My name is Chongjo. Don't call me wench or someone who's younger or a newbie or anything like that. I have a name." Well, the veteran courtesan gets upset, and she pretty much throws the wine, remaining wine, in Chongjo's face, and then she proceeds to take off her outer garment or her clothes, leaving on only her inner garment, and then she flings the clothes at Chongjo's feet. And the rest of the veteran courtesans, little groupies, her little friends, do the same, and then they say, "By tomorrow, we want all these clothes washed and ironed with cornstarch and all of those things." And so basically, Chongjo can't compete with the veteran courtesan, even though she tries to. And one of the more sympathetic courtesans stops by before she leaves, and she says, "You shouldn't have challenged her. You're just always going to lose." Well, the head mistress of the brothel finds out from, her head servant, and she tells her, she calls her omom, but she says, "Just leave them alone, pretend that you don't, see it, because unless Chongjo learns how to fight and survive on her own, she's not going to be able to survive." Well, we then move to back to the military academy, or the training, martial arts training, place where Tam Pyeong-jun is, and he basically asks Tessel what's going on and such, and Tessel is kneeling before him, and he says, "Sir, you have to kill him. You have to let me kill him because he's responsible for my father's death." And Kwon's like, "No, that's not true. Cho Kwon-ung and his men killed Merchant Park." Well, Tam Pyeong-jun very wisely looks at Tessel, and he asks, "Who was there with you when you saw, Kang Chi kill your father?" And Tessel can't remember. He just says, "Well, there was my dad," and he can't remember, so he says, "I know for sure that Kang Chi killed him." Well, Tam Pyeong-jun very quickly realizes that Tessel is now under the spell of an enchanter, and he has been brainwashed. And according to Tam Pyeong-jun, the only one who can release Tessel from this brainwashing, programming, is the enchanter himself. And so until they can find out who enchanted him and get him to break that, Tessel, pretty much when he sees Kang Chi, is going to want to kill him. And so from then on, it's kind of laughable. You see Tessel with like a blindfold around his eyes whenever he is in public, where he might be, running into Kang Chi. Well, Tam Pyeong-jun is concerned that Kang Chi may not survive, and he tells Yeo to kind of watch over Kang Chi and make sure he's okay. Well, the two, I guess, guards who have some medical background, they try to staunch Kang Chi's blood flow, and it's just tough because they suspect that the broadsword has nicked one of his vessels. And I'm thinking, it's an abdominal wound. Of course it's going to nick the vessel. I'm surprised it didn't nick a, aortic artery and, he just bled out. But anyway, so Yeo is set to watch. Well, while Kang Chi is in kind of an unconscious state, thinking about, he starts to hallucinate and dream about the time that he and Tessel were talking, and they were talking about dreams, and Kang Chi's dream was, I believe, to stay at the 100-Year Inn and serve Merchant Park and the family and the inn faithfully. Well, Tessel says his dream is to get respect and recognition from his father. And Kang Chi says, well, you already are starting to get that from the managing of the inn, so I guess all that's left now is for you to get married. And Tessel just kind of is like, oh no, not you too. And then Kang Chi's like, why? Is it like what Chongzhou teased you about? Are you really afraid of women? And, Tessel's like, no, of course not. And he blusters. And so Kang Chi says, or is there a woman you already have in mind? And then Tessel stops and he doesn't say anything or tries to cover it up. And then Kang Chi's like, oh, you do? Who is it? Tell me. Well, my suspicion is, that little scene there confirmed for me that Tessel likes Yeo Wool. So for those of you who think, no, you're reading too much into it, I think you're going to be proven wrong. Yeah, I got the feeling Tessel really likes Yeo Wool. We can sense that from a few episodes ago when he saw her at his inn. He was so warm in his greeting of her. And now we find out that he does like her, and you'll see that soon. Especially later on in the episode, Yeo Wool says something, and it causes him to kind of, stop a little bit because he was afraid that she might, what's the word I'm looking for? She might read into his intentions or, discover his feelings for her, or, things like that. Well, anyway, while Kang Chi is reliving that flashback, so is Tessel as he thinks back, and there's a part of his sanity that is still intact where he thinks, this is my best friend. Something's wrong, or I've got to control this, especially since Tam Pyongjin told him, you are being brainwashed. I can tell you that Kang Chi did not kill your father. So anyway, so Chongzhou back at the brothel house, she finally washes all of the clothes, she hangs them up to dry, and then the veteran, some of the veteran courtesans come by, and she's like, oh, did you think you could get away with this so easily and be done with this so quickly? And then they pull down all the clothes from the clothesline, and Chongzhou literally has to redo that again because they step on the clothes as they walk away just to ensure that the dirt would be embedded in that silk clothing. Okay, I needed to make sure my dog was okay. So anyhow, evening comes around, and Yeo Wool learns from one of the guards who is taking care of Kang Chi that Kang Chi's situation is really critical. There's a great chance that he may not survive the evening. And so Yeo Wool goes in, and she notices all the scars. There's one scar particularly on his forearm, and she remembers that that was where not only did he get bitten by a dog trying to save her, but it was also the arm where he took that sword for her when they were fighting those like hallucinogen ninjas. So Yeo Wool decides, you know what, I'm going to have to save him by taking his bracelet off so that his Kumyo self can restore his body. Well, as she's about to reach for the bracelet, she hears So Jung's voice saying, don't do it. Don't interfere. And then we flash back to one of her last conversations with So Jung, in which So Jung had told her, you need to let Kang Chi go his own path. Do not interfere. And Yeo Wool says, well, if he's going to die or if there's something I can do to help him, then I will. And then So Jung, pretty much suspects that she likes him. And Yeo Wool says, there's no danger of that because he's in love with someone else. He has someone else in mind. And So Jung pretty much tells, because she says, he's a good friend. I would do that for any friend. And So Jung says, well, then can you promise me that he will be nothing more than just a good friend? And she saves herself by not really fully answering his question, but by saying, there's no worry of that because he's in love with someone else and he doesn't see me as a girl, which is so true until the end of this episode. So anyway, so she takes the bracelet off, and at first she just kind of looks, and she's really disappointed because nothing's going on, right? The wound is still there. She uncovers his wound, and it's still there. And then all of a sudden, the kumyo lights and the fireflies with the kumyo lights start flashing before her eyes. And then next thing you know, his wound is completely healed. And there's a really great photo shot or a camera shot of the bracelet on her hand as she fingers the, place that Kang Chi's wound used to be. Well, before she can slip the bracelet back onto his wrist, though, Kang Chi opens his eyes and his kumyo self is in full possession, and he jerks away and he's like, who are you? What have you done to me? And he topples her literally to the floor, and as Yeo Wool goes down, her arm hits the candlestick. And so she has a wound, but I couldn't see very well whether it was a wound from the candlestick or whether Kang Chi had somehow wounded her. Well, anyway, so Kang Chi's about to kill her. He's choking her, and then Kwon hears that from the other side of the compound, and he rushes to find out what's going on. He suspects that Yeo Wool has awakened, Kang Chi and stuff. But anyway, so Kang Chi kind of backs away, letting Yeo Wool get back up when he realizes that Yeo Wool was only trying to save him. And so she literally holds up the bracelet, saying, here, put the bracelet back, Kang Chi. And at the mention of his name, the beast within kind of calms down a little bit. And Kang Chi's breathing very heavily, to kind of indicate that he's still in his bestial form. And then as Yeo Wool says, this is your bracelet, put it back on so you can be human again. Kang Chi slowly but surely edges forward, and then you see Yeo Wool, who literally, it's almost as though she is taming the beast, right? Beauty and the Beast, if you will. And she slips the bracelet on his wrist. And then, as is always the case, whenever he's had the kumyo superpowers coursing through him and he has been healed by the kumyo lights, he loses consciousness or he just falls asleep because he's so incredibly tired. And the funny thing is, he collapses on top of Yeo Wool. Right, so Yeo Wool is on the floor, pinned down, with Kang Chi on top of her, and into the scene, Kwon comes rushing in, ready to save his mistress, right? And at that point, Yeo Wool is like, "Oh, Kwon, great, you're here! Help me get him off me!" Right? And it's really cute. So the next scene that we see is literally Kwon is just holding Kang Chi upright while Yeo Wool is putting the bandages back on him, and Kwon's very exasperated tone. He's like, "Why are we doing this? He's already healed." And Yeo Wool says, "Well, it's going to be weird if he goes around as if there's nothing wrong, so I need to put the bandage on so that people don't suspect." And Kwon's like, "Some people already know." And she's like, "I know some people know, but everyone doesn't need to know. The less people who know, the better." And so they put the bandage back on him, and as soon as literally Kang Chi is bandaged, Kwon literally just like throws him down or like releases him, and Kang Chi falls, unceremoniously to the floor. And Yeo Wool goes taking off after Kwon because she's concerned, and Kwon is like ticked. So Kwon goes out, Yeo Wool runs after him, and she's like, Kwon. And then she says, "You're not going to tell my father, are you?" And Kwon literally whirls around and he snaps at her. "What? Tell your father what? That number one, you took the bracelet off, or that you almost got killed because of that?" And she's just kind of stunned by, the vehemence of his response. And then that's when Kwon sees that there is a bruise, or not a bruise, but there's actually a gash on her arm. And he kind of grabs her arm and he's like, "What is this?" Right? And Yeo Wool, she kind of looks at it and she's like, "Oh, well, he didn't do it. I hurt myself when I fell back because of the candlestick." And so I couldn't watch it very closely to see if it was really the wound from the candlestick or whether it was something that had happened when Kang Chi's kumyo had grabbed her. Well, and anyway, Kwon gets really upset, and he's like, "The next time he hurts you, it's we're not going to need to worry about anyone because I'm going to personally kill him." Right? And then Kwon stalks off, showing very much a jealous self. Yeo Wool still doesn't get it yet. And then, because Kwon mentioned it, sometimes after the excitement and the exhilaration of a particularly stressful event, and then someone points out that he's been hurt, the wound starts to hurt. Well, Yor sinks to the ground and she's kind of cradling her arm a little bit, wincing in pain. And we see in the background Tessa watching all of this happening. Well, on the other side of town at the brothel, the headmistress finds Chungjo asleep after she's done all of the washing a second time. And Chungjo wakes up and, she straightens herself and she's like, I'm sorry, I fell asleep and things like that. And then the headmistress says, come follow me. And then she does. And there's this incredibly, very forward-thinking moment where the headmistress tells Chungjo, she shows her the Korean drums, which, it's a sign of this incredible musicianship and things like that. But anyway, Chungjo's just entranced by the instrument, and the headmistress tells her, in our society, women are very confined by laws and dictates. But now that your father has passed away, you no longer have the restrictions of your name. And she's like, I don't think that women need to be bound by how society dictates and what men tell them they are or, should not do, and, all of that stuff. And she says, I think that women can, forge their own path, forge their own destiny, and become whatever they wish. And literally, as she talks to Chungjo, she opens a new avenue of future for Chungjo, because the headmistress says, yes, the life of a kisang is someone who pours drinks and sometimes will, comfort men and things like that. But at the same time, there are other opportunities that a life of a kisang will allow women to do. It liberates us to pursue and learn new things. And so her conversation with Chungjo definitely is opening new ideas in Chungjo's mind. It's always been sheltered by what her father and her brother have said, and also what her mother have said. Well, anyway, it's morning, and it's hilarious because the morning, Tam Pyongjun's like, what do you mean he's disappeared? Because one of the guards comes running into his office saying, Sir, Kang Chi has disappeared. And of course, Yeo is there, right? And so they're all wondering, where the heck is Kang Chi? Because Tam Pyongjun doesn't realize that, Kang Chi has been completely healed, right? Well, the next, we cut scene to Kang Chi crouched on the kitchen floor, eating a basket of steamed potatoes. And one of the kitchen help comes in, one of the little guards who does kitchen duty, and he's like, oh, you're that guy. And Kang Chi's like, oh, you know of me? And he's like, yeah, you're the one who got hurt and all of the stuff, right? And then so they're on friendly terms, and then Kang Chi says, hey, is there anything a little bit more substantial, like meaty and savory and things like that? And then the guy's like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't offer that to you because the kitchen master is very strict about things like that. And then Kang Chi's like, well, who's the kitchen master? It's okay, let's try to steal or whatnot, right? Steal a bit of food, the person won't, miss it. And then the kitchen servant guy's like, he will, Well, Kang Chi is kind of talking, and then the kitchen master actually is an old man who comes up and he bops him on the head with his little broomstick, and Kang Chi's like, ow, ow, why'd you do that? And literally the kitchen guy gives, the kitchen master gives him a hard time, and then as he's kind of fighting with the kitchen master, he feels another smack on the other side. He's like, now what? Who is this? And he looks up and it's Yeo. And so it's just hilarious. In this one little camera shot, you have the two people in the entire world that Kang Chi will allow to hit him, which is now the kitchen master and the other one is Yeo, right? And so Yeo is like, where have you been? Why are you in the kitchen, right? And literally she grabs him by the ear and then she pulls him out of the kitchen. And she basically tells him, look, if you want to stay here for a long time, you have to get on good terms with this kitchen master, right? And Kang Chi's like, why? He's just a kitchen guy, What he doesn't realize is that kitchen master is one of the 4 trainers or masters at that, academy who is going to determine whether Kang Chi stays or goes. Well, anyway, so she pulls him out, and then Kang Chi says, he thanks her for having saved him, but then he tells her in a really serious moment, he tells her, if it ever happens that you need to do that again, don't. He's like, I don't want to, more than anyone else, I don't want to risk your getting hurt. And so Yeo is really touched by that, right? And then that moment though is broken up because Kwon, who is out of his ninja outfit, comes and he's in regular, blue and white outfit now, and he says, the master or the teacher wants, 서범님, right? He's like, the teacher wants to see both of you. And so Yeo literally grabs Kang Chi's ear again, she drags him away to go meet her father. Well, Kwon sees how close they are, and of course he's not particularly liking it. Well, when they eventually meet the father at this, massive training room, there's a nice little motto that Kang Chi's like, wow. And it's the father who explains that it's about how you need to have tolerance or patience and self-discipline and all of those things to conquer yourself. And anyway, so Kang Chi sits before him, and then Taeseo is brought in, and Taeseo's got the blindfold because he doesn't want to see Kang Chi. As soon as he sees him, he's going to want to kill him, right? So Tam Pyeongjun explains to the entire group, and Kang Chi hears it for the first time that Taeseo has been brainwashed or is under an enchantment. And so Tam Pyeongjun says, "Hey, avoid Taeseo at all cost." And you gotta love Kang Chi, because Kang Chi just basically looks at Taeseo and he's like, "Is that it? Is that, why you, came at me with a sword?" And he's like, "You know what? I don't accept that. You're not that weak to, I don't know how strong this enchantment is or whatnot, but I know that there's human will and that you can fight this." And he's like, "Fight it. Don't give in to this," and all this stuff, right? And then Kang Chi's like, "Because I am not gonna avoid you, if that's the reason why," and all this stuff. And then he looks over at Tam Pyeongjun and he's like, "Sir," and he's like, "Teacher, is that," because he's not supposed to call Tam Pyeongjun sir, he's supposed to call him teacher, right? There's a difference. But anyway, he says, "Teacher, does that answer your, question to this whole situation?" Well, Kang Chi leaves, and it's hilarious because he goes huffing off, and then the kitchen master happens to be listening, right? And so he tells Kang Chi, go in and eat. Get ready to eat. I'm sure you're hungry, right? And while Kang Chi is, going to his little breakfast place, Tam Pyeongjun talks with Taeseo, Kwon, and Yeo Wool in a conference, and they leave, Kang Chi specifically out of the thing. And basically, within the conference, you find out that Lee Sung-shin has commissioned Tam Pyeongjun to get the 5,000 yang from that secret storage so that they can start building the armada or the fleet that they're going to need pretty soon. So while that's going on, we cut scene to Cho Gon-woong, who is looking at the painting that covers the entranceway into the secret compartment, and he's looking at it, he's like, there's something very mesmerizing and something that draws the viewer into this picture, right? And you're just kind of like, as he's watching, you're like, oh no, that's the secret passageway, don't get too close. But anyway, into that scene, he calls a workman in, because Kang Chi, when he slammed that broomstick into the ground, he made such a dent that they're going to have to fix the ground. Well, this workman says, well, it's going to take a few, I think he said it's going to take a few weeks or something. And Cho Gon-woong said, fix it within like a few days or something like that. And so the guy's like, what? And so they're going to renovate the entire room, or the entire flooring, right? And so part of me, when I was watching it, got really nervous because I was thinking, oh my gosh, the workman's going to find the secret passageway and the secret, storage. Well, we had nothing to fear, because basically the workman is actually someone hired by Tam Pyeongjun. They're in cahoots together, and he's going to be instrumental in getting the Yeo Wool and Kwon into the secret compartment so that they can pull the money out, all under the guise of renovating that room. Well, the worker leaves to do his stuff, and in comes Kang Chi's father, who is incredibly been tortured. He's in pain and whatnot, and Cho Gon-woong throws some, figures at him, the books, the ledger, I guess, is what it's called. And he says, I hear that there's a secret compartment where he houses all, Merchant Park housed the rest of his wealth. And, servant Che's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I really don't know. And Chogunung really threatens death or, more torture or a cessation to that torture if, servant Choi will help him, right? And he's just, saying, I don't know, I'm so sorry, and, please, save me, I don't know. Because Chogunung looks at the ledger and he's thinking, the 100-year inn is so prosperous that there's no way that the ledger can reflect accurately the income of the 100-year inn. So he's trying to figure out, where did Merchant Park keep the rest of his fortune? Was it in the secret compartment, as rumors say, and so on and so forth. Okay. Well, we then cut scene to the conversation that Tam Pyongjun had with Lee Sung-shin about using the workmen, and Lee Sung-shin chuckles and says, we really have Kang Chi to thank for this opportunity. And Tam Pyongjun is like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, when Kang Chi went in and slammed that, it created a reason for us to go in with workmen under the guise of being workers to fix that. Well, Tam Pyongjun's still a little bit concerned, can Kang Chi be someone, is he someone that can be trusted? And Lee Sung-shin said that he does. He said, in our world there are plenty of human beings who do not act like human beings, and yet we have one who isn't quite human being, who desperately wants to be a human being. And he says, for my part, I'm curious to see what kind of human being he will be. And so, Lee Sung-shin, he's just incredible. He's always saying so many awesome things. And over the weekend, I got really busy and I wanted to do a musing, either Friday, Saturday, or even Sunday, week 4 musing, and it just didn't happen. So for those of you who are looking for, musing week 4, bear with me. This week, at the end of this week, I hope I will film a musings week 4 and 5. But in that, I wanted to really kind of talk a little bit about Lee Sung-shin and how just awesome he is. One of the things that I did ask my parents about that, and one of the things that I remember learning about Lee Sung-shin is that as he lay dying in one of the battles, he told his, minions, or his, one of his, I guess, soldiers, he said, do not let it be known that I died, because he was afraid of retaliation or weakened morale among his troops. And just, when you hear that type of heroic last words, it really speaks to the heart of a general who the country had betrayed, and, he had been jailed unjustly, and they had stripped him of all his accolades, all his military honors, and at the end, he was really fighting as an enlisted man, and just incredibly, such an incredible patriot to continue to defend his country after his country had, betrayed him. But anyway, when my father told me that Lee Sung-shin had basically said, do not tell people that I died, and then literally he was strapped to a chair so that everyone would see that he was still sitting and alive, right? And it really gets to you that such an ordinary man could be of such extraordinary character. And anyway, I'll stop gushing about him. Anyway, so all of that happens, and they're planning now this plan to go into Merchant Park's secret compartment, all under Cho Kwon-young's nose, and pull out 5,000 yang, which literally is the entire compartment from what I understand. Well, to offset the seriousness of that, we flash then to Kang Chi, and it's hilarious. He runs and he opens the door, and it's so cool. There are all these tables, and in ancient Korea they used to have meals on tiny little portable tables, kind of like the breakfast in bed trays that we have in the United States. Well, Kang Chi sees 2 rows of all of these pretty meals, and his eyes light up, and he's just smacking his lips, and literally he's about to walk in, and then from behind him all the soldiers go right by him, right? And he's kind of stunned, and then he sees one of the soldiers who had been in charge of taking care of him, and so he thanks him, and when the guy says, oh, are you healed? Well, he kind of fakes, and he's like, a little bit, because Yeo had told him, don't let on that you're completely healed, or they're gonna think you're like a freak or not human. And so the servant guy, I mean the soldier guy, says to Kang Chi, he's like, oh, I'm glad you're feeling better. Your meal is at the end. Go ahead and eat. And Kang Chi's like, yes, and he like runs, right? And then he gets to his meal, and it's hilarious, the look on his face. He's like, what is this? He's like, 이게 뭐지? In Korean, right? He looks down, and literally his table has rice and a little bit of like soy sauce kind of soup. It's hilarious. And then he looks over, and the other like tables have like all the side dishes, soup and rice, and Kang Chi starts to get mad, and he's like fisting. And then the guy that he had met in the kitchen, right? The nice guy who was like, 형님, 형님, right? He's like, sir, aren't you eating? You know? And he's like, are you kidding me? And he's like, why, aren't you hungry? And he's like, whose idea of a joke is this, right? And you see him totally clenching his teeth, and he's like peeved. And then the servant soldier says, well, sir, the kitchen master thought that since you were just, recovering from your wound, that porridge would be better for you. And then Kang Chi like takes off to give the kitchen, head kitchen guy a piece of his mind. Well, it's hilarious because when you do see the kitchen master, he's there like picking over a nice big bowl of chicken meat, right? And then Kang Chi like literally drops his porridge bowl, and he's like, so this is what you've been, huh? You give someone who's just recovering from a wound porridge while you're stuffing your face with chicken and all this stuff, right? Well, then the kitchen master says, why, you want to fight for it then? And Kang Chi's like, what? Okay, no take backs. You said that. You said it first. So, and I guess the deal is that if Kang Chi can take the broom away from the kitchen master, then he can eat all of the chicken that the kitchen master was eating. Well, Kang Chi doesn't realize that the chicken master is actually one of the 4 masters of the entire military academy, and that he is one of the 4 who's going to decide whether Kang Chi gets to stay or not, because that was one of the stipulations. Tam Pyongyun said, if you guys create problems here, then people then the decision may be to kick you out of the compound. And then Kang Chi's like, well, who makes the decisions? And that's when Tam Pyongyun says, there are 4 masters besides myself who make that decision. Kitchen master is one of those guys. So anyway, it's hilarious. He has so much fun harassing and teasing Kang Chi with the broom, and Kang Chi just continues to get beat up. And the irony that I think is really awesome is Kang Chi obviously can really fight with the best of them, but when it comes to Yeo and then this kitchen master, there's something about them that prompts Kang Chi to hold back and not fully fight. So Kang Chi's always the one getting hit. Well, he gets down on the floor, and he's kind of wincing in pain, and he's like, who are you really? I mean, what's your real identity? And the guy's like, I'm the kitchen master here. And he's like, seriously though, who are you? And he's like, well, one of the other titles I have is that I'm one of the 4 masters at this military academy. And then Kang Chi's like, oh shoot, you're one of the 4 that I have to try to impress, right? Well, while this is going on, Yeo is in her room, attending to her wound, and she's, sprinkling some medicine on. And you know that it's obviously bothering her. It's a pretty deep gash. And she runs out quickly because Kwon says, mistress, everyone's waiting. And so she runs out, and there's Tessel. And he tells her, are things okay? Are you sure you don't need to go? And she's like, well, no, this is something I want to go. Okay. And then she's like, isn't Kang Chi going to go? And he's like, no, because Kang Chi can be incredibly stubborn, so we're going to leave him out and things like that. And, there's this, they have a discussion, and, within that discussion, Tessa said, mistress, Yeo, if I had my way, I really wish you wouldn't go either. And that's when she literally says to him, she asks him, do you see me as a woman? And the look on his face confirms that Tessel has a soft heart for Yeo. But anyway, Yeo, of course, totally oblivious. And then she says, this is something that I need to do. This is something that I want to do, right? Well, in the meantime, Kang Chi is doing KP duty, kitchen patrol duty, because he lost, right, to the kitchen master. And then the kitchen master says, so is it true that you are close associates with Lee Sun-shin? And Kang Chi kind of like, brags. He's like, oh yeah, we're this close. And, he even, was willing to give up his entire possession and position for me. And so the kitchen master says, I want proof. And Kang Chi's like, what? And he's like, give me proof. And so they have this little wager where Kang Chi has to provide him proof that Lee Sung Shin was willing to give up everything. And I'm thinking to myself, oh no, Kang Chi's gonna head into Cho Won-ung's, the 100-year inn to get that contract, right? Well, the kitchen master says, get that proof or else you're out of here. And so Kang Chi now feels like he has to go. Well, as he gets ready and as the other people get ready, Cho Won-ung shows up at the brothel because his house is now under construction, right? So he's going to stay at the courtesan's place for the duration of the renovation time. And of course, he happens to see Chongjo sweeping, and the headmistress sees from afar Cho Won-ung harassing Chongjo, and the look of concern on her face. It's going to be an interesting few days. Well, Kang Chi shows up and he's got his little worker's mask on, and as he's trying to get into the private chambers of Cho Won-ung, where Merchant Park used to, live, the head henchman guy says, "You there!" And then, like, literally, Kang Chi stops. And thankfully, it wasn't to him, but it was to the head worker, right? Or maybe it wasn't, but the head worker responds, and he's like, "Yes, sir." And the head henchman's like, "Why is there a huge tarp covering the entrance of this part of the house?" And the worker, kind of pretends like he's coughing. He's like, "Oh, there was so much dust here that we're going to cover it to contain the dust so it doesn't go into the rest of the, inn and all of this stuff." So thankfully, the head henchman kind of believes it, but kind of doesn't. He's very suspicious still. And as he's about to turn away, that's when Yeo and Kwon slip inside to go into their secret compartment. Well, they get to the private chambers, and who should they find but Kang Chi already seated there and waiting for them. And he's like, "So, whose idea was it to, leave me out of this, mission? I can't believe you guys, were gonna leave me out of this." And he's like, "So how can I help you?" And Yeo says, "Don't help. Just go, and this is something we have to do," and all of this stuff. Well, in the midst of that, Kang Chi notices that she's kind of sweating on her forehead, and then he reaches her forehead to see if she's feeling okay. And of course, Kwon gets really upset and jealous, and he like smacks his hand, saying, "How dare you touch her, properly or like without permission?" And then Kang Chi gets equally mad, saying, "Are you an idiot? Your master is obviously in pain or sick and shouldn't be out here." And then Kwon looks kind of stunned, and part of Kwon is upset because he didn't notice that about Yeo, and he had to hear it from Kang Chi. But when Kang Chi goes back to feel Yeo's forehead, Yeo is burning up. And she kind of, smacks his hand away, and then, Kwon like takes it as, invitation to teach Kang Chi a lesson. Well, they're kind of fighting, and they're like, about to come to blows. And then they hear from outside the head worker saying, "Oh, sir, why would you go in here? There's a lot of dust," and, trying to delay the guy. Well, they very quickly hide, leaving Kwon, and only Kwon, since the head henchman has never seen Kwon, in the room to kind of do some work. Well, the head henchman overhears Yeo on the other side of the secret compartment kind of misstepping a little bit, and she went, "Ugh." And so he's like, "Who goes there? I hear a human sound." Well, the episode ends not only on that cliffhanger, but on the fact that when the camera zooms in on Kang Chi and Yeo, it's to the realization that Kang Chi now knows that Master Yeo is not a master, but it's actually a mistress. And how do we know? His hand is on her front chest. So Yeo is just really stunned, and when the head henchman's like, "Stand away, there's something, I heard something," both of them kind of look towards the entryway, kind of afraid that they have been caught. So anyway, that is episode 9. I am going to stop here. No musings today. I hope you enjoyed. I think there were enough musings interspersed throughout the episode anyway. And I need to get back to grading. But I did want to pop in here, share with you episode 9, and we'll hope that I can do the same for episode 10. So take care, everyone. I hope this was helpful for you, for those of you who are patiently but anxiously awaiting English subtitles. All right, take care, everyone. Bye.